Welcome to Beyond Coaching, a podcast from the Impactful Coaching Project. Join Rob Ramsire as he interviews coaching and sport leaders about holistic coaching and the lessons they have learned over time.
All right, we got a unique episode today. Bruce Brown with Proactive Coaching is back. We've had many conversations with Bruce, but he has a pamphlet that he wrote that I've read on conditioning, and this is going to be out there to some folks. But the deeper you dig, the more it makes sense. So, yeah, I told Bruce I'm interested how people will respond to this. But Bruce, thanks for joining me today.
Well, you're very welcome, Rob. Glad to be here. I honestly don't care how people respond. I think that all I know is this works. It worked for me.
So we're talking a kind of rethinking about how we look at team conditioning and doing positive conditioning. So, first, what is it and how did it originate, Bruce?
Well, it's a different way of looking at conditioning. And, we all start off coaching as we were coached, and until we find a better way. And my coaches came right out of World War II. My sports were sports that required, like, in most cases, extra conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
Like football or basketball, those kind of things require there's a mindset that there was some like conditioning you did at the end of or at the beginning that kind of gets you in the condition needed to play. So I've also done this since I've branched off a little bit. I've also done this with sports that are like all they do is conditioning, like track, like distance runners, or like swimming. So there's a method to transfer to that too. But basically, this is what it was. And this isn't for everybody. I found myself coaching like I was coached, and I knew what I wanted from conditioning, and I knew how good a condition I wanted my teams in, but yet I had taken a positive approach to everything else. I think I had taken a positive approach to everything else very early in my career. And very honestly, Rob, I found myself sometimes like building up some anger or looking for mistakes toward the end of practice in order to condition them as much as I knew they needed a condition to be good. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember walking away from practice one time thinking, you know what? I don't like this. I don't like that mindset. I don't like that approach. I've got to change this. And I spent an entire summer thinking about the whole thing. What do you want out of your conditioning? What do you want out of it? And along with the conditioning is, what do you do to build teams? And I was pretty solid on that already, what I needed to actually build the team. And so what I try to do this particular thing is to take a way to bring my teams together in a believable way. Okay. And this isn't for everybody. I found to determine what I had thought of as maybe the worst part of practice, and probably for sure what the kids thought was the worst part of practice, and turn it into maybe what was maybe the best part of practice, not only for me, but also for them. So here's some, I learned some things about teams, and one of them was, and I have a whole list of things on how you build great teams, and one of the booklets is on that too. But one of the things was talking about an interdependence. There's an interdependence on great teams. That we're in this together. It's a feeling that the team is more important than any one individual. That includes coaches as well. And so that whole interdependence thing kind of led into my thinking. I was breaking down everything and thinking, I want to be able to build a good team. I understand how to motivate in pretty good ways. I understand that being good is a privilege. Having fun is being good. That was a mindset kind of have to change when you look at younger kids. Having fun isn't being silly. Having fun is being good. I learned that things that are rewarded to get done. Okay, so all along that whole thing. And I also realized if you reward okay effort, you get okay effort. If you reward great effort, you get great effort. I wanted great effort. I wanted great effort from our coaches. I wanted great effort from our players. And, I also knew the best form of reinforcement is verbal reinforcement, where you use both the name and the action. Instead of saying, good job, and everybody's wondering what you did, or good job, Rob, and you're wondering what you did, to say, good job, Rob, great job, Rob, for da-da-da-da-da, and I have specific action.
Can I add one nugget real quick? So
yeah.
For those that coach at the college level listening to this, there's a student developmental theorist named Arthur Chickering, and he has like stages of student development at college. in one of his stages, and it happens kind of sophomore, junior year, is moving from independence to interdependence.
Mhm.
So I'm not on my own. How do I depend on others and live in a community, which
And
fits
that's
into
a purposeful, intentional step. I'm stepping
Yep.
from me to we.
Yep.
And that's one of the main ingredients of great teams. So shifting gears to conditioning, I started looking around at what people did. And there are a lot of quote unquote real positive coaches who are like Mr. Rogers, and they're really nice. And they didn't condition their kids as much as they needed to, and their team suffered because of that. Okay. Uh, I also learned that you do as much as possible at the pace of practice.
Yes.
So you don't have to do nearly as much at the end. And I have worked with some coaches in the last 10 years after I was done coaching that did a much better job of this than I did. I think I did a really good job with it in basketball, football, not so much, but I worked with some people that if I would have seen them earlier, I could have done more of this during at the pace of practice. Uh, anyway, there's a whole lot of different things, but I still really couldn't find what I wanted to do. So I sat down and I said, okay, what do I want out of my conditioning? What are my goals for conditioning? Here's the thing. Number one, I want to be in better condition than anybody on our schedule. That's in our control. I wanted our entire team to be in better physical condition than anybody we were going to play. I wanted our conditioning to be a source of pride. And I think I've talked to you before about the good kind of pride, the bad kind of pride, the bad kind of pride, the arrogance. Good kind of pride is shared joy. That's that interdependence. Okay, that shared joy that you get when you've accomplished something really tough. I didn't want to have to be ticked off at him to get him to run. Okay.
That's what I'm sitting here.
I wanted to do the exact opposite.
Yeah, and that's what I'm sitting here thinking about all the years that I coached and making them run when I was ticked. I mean, that's just over and over again.
Yeah, one of the principles that I started with all my coaching is demand in direct proportion to how much you love your athletes. You demand from them, and it's no different than your own children. You demand in direct proportion how much you love them. And so for my teams, it was like, I'm going to demand this out of you because I love you, not because I'm mad at you or because this is some kind of punishment. So I wanted also to have them my athletes to get the focus on them off themselves. Okay, that back to interdependence, and get the focus off themselves and how uncomfortable they were to focus on their teammates. That comes down to basically only one rule or one standard I had: don't let your buddies down, don't let your teammates down, so that they're relying on me, kind of a thing. So I'm going to do this a lot quicker than I normally do. My goal over the summer was to take what I knew about building good teams, to take what I knew about motivation, to get what I want, to get what I want for them, to be in better condition, to have, all the stuff we wanted to have be a source of pride, etc. So here's the first premise. And people said, are you going to take this? I remember one time I made a jump from coaching ninth grade boys to junior college in one jump. And some of my friends said, are you going to take that positive condition up there with those college guys? And I said, yeah, there's really nothing. This is what I understand. And you've got to really understand it. And you got to believe in it. And so I remember saying to my guys early in the first few days, I have a different approach to conditioning, a different philosophy about conditioning. So I want you to think about this. Here's a few premises. Do you think that being in better condition will make you a better player? That's pretty simple. All hands went up. Okay. Do you think that you being a better individual player in great condition will make us a better team? You can't say no to that one. Can you? Okay. And then the third one was, being in great condition will allow us to have more success. Can't deny
Hard
that.
to argue with.
So if those first four things are true, you being in better condition makes a better athlete, you being in better condition makes a better team. It's something that all great teams is that great level of conditioning. Therefore, the fourth thing is conditioning here will be a privilege. And they didn't have any idea what I was talking about, but I got into it pretty fast with them. So in other words, what that really means, it's a privilege. I had to shift all my thinking and all the conditioning drills I've ever done into this mindset. And if I couldn't make that transition, I dropped the drill. So the first thing is the better you practice, the more I'm going to allow you to condition. Whoa. Hey, Okay. And during that time, we're going to praise your effort, not the outcome. I'm going to praise your effort during that conditioning, not your outcome. If you win a drill, you get to run. If you don't win, you don't get to run. And this is just this total mind shift for these guys. So you've got to kind of redo it. Here's another concept that I use in this, that you reward your best workers instead of punishing your poor workers. That you praise your great workers. And then if you want whatever you want more of, praise that. So I wanted all great workers. So I praised my great workers. They heard their name getting called for what they were doing. All right. So anyway, oops, how did I do that? I'll get
I
that.
still got you.
Okay. So I'll just give you a couple of examples of how we did this.
Mhm. Can I ask a question before you jump to examples?
Absolutely.
So we have great coaches where I'm at, but I can just picture the responses of presenting this from the older school coaches of, oh, give me a break. You're going to let the kid that win the sprints keep running what's your responses to that stuff?
First of all, don't overdo it.
Okay.
And the first question I get, Rob, is always this, and it usually is not asked in front of everybody. It's asked privately afterwards.
Mhm.
What do you use for punishment? If you're not going to make them run, what do you use for punishment? And so my answer is the worst punishment you can ever give an athlete who cares. And if they don't care, they shouldn't be there. And the worst punishment you can ever give an athlete who really cares is to not let them be part of it.
Yep.
Have a seat over there. I'll get to you when I get a chance. What you're doing right now is not acceptable. Boom, all your positive energy goes back to the kids that are on the floor, and away you go. Okay.
Right on.
So it doesn't, using conditioning as punishment is stupid. Isn't conditioning essential for a success? Why use something that's essential for success at punishment? All right. So I think if you hear the whole thing and then really understand it and then look at your own style and say, how can I apply this? Like, this isn't for everybody. But I'll tell you what, people have made this change. It's the feedback I get from people who've made this change that this is, our teams are in much better condition.
Yep.
Our teams are much closer, all that stuff. So here's just one example. And this is the first drill that I did with my junior college kids. I said, okay, for this next 10 minutes or 8 minutes or whatever it was, split up with a partner, go to a basket. We have plenty of baskets. Like go with a partner to a basket, alternate one-on-ones. If you make them both, you get to go down and back. If you miss either one, you don't get to go down and back. And this big kid from New York looks at me and he goes, Coach, don't you mean if we miss it, we got to run? I said, no. Remember, the conditioning is a privilege. It's something that great teams do. So if you make them both, the reward is you get to be in better condition. And so I prime my other coaches because your verbal reinforcement is a key part of this whole thing. So I prime my other coaches to really wait for my cue. And so the first 3 or 4 kids didn't take long for some, start hitting both ends. And they kind of, jog down and jog back, not a word. Nothing. All of a sudden they're going 80%, 90%, no word. All of a sudden I got this little guy hit both free throws and took off like a got shot cat, man. He was down and back. I out of baby Josh. Way to knock your free throws down, Josh. Way to sprint and finish. Way to touch the line. Okay. His name and what he had done. He had made his free throws. He went end to end hard as he could. It didn't take 3 seconds. I had another one. And pretty soon we had a gym full of guys running like blind dogs in a meat house and not having any idea why they're doing it. We finished that drill. They came over and their tongues are hanging out. And there's like, well, what just happened? And all it was, Rob, was verbal praise and reinforcing great, waiting for great, and then reinforcing great. All right. So there's a bunch of them I did in there.
And their name seems key. Using their name. And using their name. Yeah.
Name and action. Okay. Yep. Look at this. This isn't even like a condition. Well, you could, football sometimes do it. Look at the difference between saying to your PE class or saying to your football team, okay, everybody's got 30 push-ups. Ready to go. Well, some guys could do 50 and not even be thinking about it. And some guys can't do 10. And so, the old style would be, he didn't get 30, everybody's got 30 more, right? he didn't do that 16 in a certain amount of time, so everybody's going to run it again. Oh my goodness. So that kid that can only do 10, he ain't going to get 30 the next time.
Nope.
There's no way. So instead of saying that, when I say go, you've got 30 seconds to see how many push-ups you can do. That allows us as coaches to observe their effort. And for the kid who can only do 10 and he's struggling to get 11 as hard as he possibly can, he's hearing his name. Way to push yourself, Johnny. Way to push yourself. Way to go as hard as you can. Okay. And the kid that it could do 50 in 30 seconds, he's just kind of coasting along and he does 30, and just, he doesn't hear anything.
Yeah.
It's no different than if you say, we're going to run a 16 in a minute in basketball. We're going to run it, the goal is a minute. And the kid that can't run in a minute, what's he going to do? Make them all run again. That's not helping your team. That's not helping that kid. All I'm looking for is your best effort. And what about the kid that can run a 16 in 52 seconds? He runs in 59.9, right? Because he's under 60. and so I'm rewarding not his best effort. So this whole thing on find ways to praise effort and attitude. You get effort and attitude, get a natural skill progression. I've got a ton of them. I'll just give you an example of one.
And I will tell everybody his pamphlet is an easy, short read. He's not asking me to promote it, but it even has diagrams and examples of how you can do this in practice.
Yeah. We would run 3-person exchanges where you'd have 2 people at the goal line, and you'd have one person say at the 30 or 40, and the goal line where there's 2 of them, one would leave, touch the one at the end, and then run back. So it's a good conditioning measure where it's run, rest, interval running kind of stuff. And what we'd say is our goal today, or I'd let the kids set the goal. What our goal today is 3 minutes or 4 minutes or whatever. We'll do 4 minutes or until we get any one individual's less than their best effort.
Hmm.
And as soon as we'd get some kids' best effort, we'd stop them. I didn't get mad at them. We just stopped them. Great teams wouldn't have people coasting. Great teams wouldn't have people letting their teammates down because they're not giving everything they got. And usually the kid who was not giving everything he got was usually your kid who's your thoroughbred who could run it real easily. And he's faster than everybody if he runs 80%, right? And I remember I'd pull those kids out. I wouldn't single them out in front of everybody, but I'd pull them out very soon after that, bring them over and say, hey, hey, Sean, we stopped that drill because of you. Well, coach, I was beating everybody. I know you were, but I wasn't asking you to beat everybody. I was asking you for your best effort, and you were coasting.
I bet that's a challenge in this of those type of kids that are so fast or talented or used to beating people. They've probably never had to have their work rate that high consistently.
Yep. And, there's the way we did it, and lots of different ways. But yes, those kids are the ones who that kid said, that'll never happen again. Mm-hmm. It's probably the first time he'd ever been called on it because he was faster than everybody and he didn't have to try. And that's the bottom line is, though, I'm not asking you to beat people. I'm asking you for your personal best effort for your teammates.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That whole thing. So here's one that I put in specifically for boys. Girls, when I coach girls, this wasn't as much of an issue. Boys didn't like to ask for help. Okay. So sometimes we'd do, say you had 3 groups of 3 and they'd be on the baseline and they'd just be doing halfback fullbacks. And I'd say, okay, go as long as you can. And the first I did this would say, it was called help your buddy. So one guy, player A, runs half court, full court, half court, full court. And as soon as the guy next in line sees him starting to slow or struggle, that guy raises his hand and said, I got you, buddy. And he steps in and runs for him. That guy steps out. There, we're building our team. I got your back. Okay. The flip side of that one was ask for help. So player A would run until he feels like he needs help. And then on the way back, he raises his hand saying, basically, I need help. The other guy says, I got you, buddy. He steps in and runs for him. That was an icebreaker for my guys to admit that they needed help and to actually ask somebody for help. So I have a whole list of those different ones, but you know, there's some really, really powerful ones. I don't know if you've read the book about the eliminator,
Mhm.
and I don't talk about that very often. Whenever I do talk about that, I tell people this is like a once a year one.
Okay.
Because I have some guy emailed me back and said, "Oh, that eliminator, it's unbelievably powerful. We've already done it 5 times and it's just been 1 week." And it's like, "Oh no, you're gonna kill that because you don't wanna
Yep.
you want it to remain, you want to get as much done at the pace of practice as you can. So when you
Mhm.
are doing conditioning, it is a chance for kids to shine, okay, and to help each other than it is to be complying to coach's orders."
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
So
there's a lot to that.
let me
Uh,
ask you a question, and
yeah.
just full disclosure, my mind's going to how do I poke holes in this because everything's so rational, but it's so countercultural. So, what's your response to? I know a lot of coaches have like a preseason conditioning expectation of when you get here, you need to be able to run this and this time,
Mhm.
and if you don't, like, okay, this is what I did as a coach. I expected them, and it's antiquated. I wouldn't do it now, but they had to run a 7-minute mile when they reported to school. And if they didn't, then I just met them at the track every Saturday morning at, 7 a.m. until they hit it.
Mhm.
How would you do it in this model? In the positive conditioning model, how would you adjust that?
I'm not sure I would do that, first of all. I
Yeah.
would if I couldn't transfer that drill into the philosophy that I've got for positive conditioning, I would throw it out.
Mhm.
Uh, here's maybe an example. When we would run like 16s cross court, and I'd say the goal was a minute, uh, and we would stop them if I got anybody's less than their best effort. We'd stop them in the middle of it. Do we
Mhm.
let 'em But if they weren't gonna make it under a minute, if they dived across the line, I counted it. Okay? If they're giving everything they got and then the last 10 feet they dive,
Yeah.
we'd hug them.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, they're
what
having
more
fun.
can they do? I'll tell you who love this are bigger kids in football, or
Mhm.
bigger, slower kids in football. Love getting recognized for their effort.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot to it. Once you get them to buy in as a coach, you can't go back. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? So if I'm doing it this way, I can't all of a sudden get ticked off. Go, everybody on the line, we're running. Oh,
Yep.
you're gone. You've
Yep.
lost all your credibility.
Yeah, you didn't
Uh,
mean what you said.
yeah, bad effort and bad concentration are also athlete-owned behaviors. What I'm reinforcing with this is behaviors that they own, their best effort. And if you are focusing on athlete-owned behaviors, your standards can be way up there.
Mhm.
Okay. And you'll get natural. That kid that couldn't do 10 push-ups, but you're praising, okay, pretty soon he's doing 12, and then he's doing 14. The kid the kid on the other end of that couldn't do 10, and then he didn't get 30, so everybody's got 30 more. What's that kid do? Next time we get to push-ups, he goes, "Coach, a bad shoulder." Right? "Oh, coach,
Yep.
man, I'm hurt.
Yep.
I can't do it." They excuse themselves from the situation because they don't wanna get their teammates penalized and have their teammates be upset at them, and so they excuse themselves from it. And so they don't ever get any better. And so if, you're rewarding regardless of outcome, regardless of total push-ups or how fast they run. But all you're looking for is, are you giving everything you got for your teammates?
Mhm.
Um,
Which
we're
in
spending
itself
time
is
together.
yeah, that in itself is a reason to do it.
Yeah.
The interdependence and the working for each other.
Mhm. Um, you won't believe how hard kids will work.
Yeah.
We had what was called a push day, and we used it mainly in football. And it was a day where we went it became a tradition. We went way beyond anything we'd ever done before as far as conditioning is concerned, and the book talks about it. Anyway, we do it, and it's like the kids are like, "Oh my gosh, that was unbelievable." I'd say, "Okay, now we're gonna talk about how conditioning is more mental than it is physical. We're gonna take
Mhm.
this toughest day we've ever had, and now we're gonna double it. We're
Mhm.
gonna repeat it if you'd like to. How good do you wanna be?"
Yeah.
Okay? and I never had kids. Anyway, so I had one year I was coaching, and I had a group of my players come in to me at lunch, and they said, "Coach, don't you believe in us?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." "Don't you care for it? Don't you love us?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." They said, "How come we haven't had a push day yet?"
Mm.
I said, "Look at the master schedule next Wednesday." And it's
Here it
like,
comes.
ah, they were like relieved that they were going to be considered like the past teams and get that reward. It's kind of nuts. You won't believe how much they encourage and support each other.
Yeah. Well, it
It's
matches
just,
up with, and this, I think we've talked about this before and it wouldn't have surprised you anyways, but we're inside a 3-year research project where they're athletes where I'm at now. And we ask them, what motivates you to participate in your sport? And we even have them rank order the top 10 motivations. And the number one motivator is their teammates, their
Mhm.
peers.
Yeah,
And this builds exactly on that.
exactly on it. And the whole thing of I'm not running, I'm not running because I'm going to get in trouble if I don't. I'm not running because of any other thing. I'm running my hardest because I don't want to be the one that causes my teammates not to be able to condition. I don't want to let my buddies down here. That whole
Mhm.
premise. And what happens is you get these people who are encouragers like crazy. Also, your strongest players are also your best conditioned.
Mhm.
Okay, because they're getting pushed, and the expectation is exactly the same for them, and they're doing a lot more. Okay,
Mhm.
and your weaker players are in better condition than they would have ever been otherwise.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's it's um it's 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 different, and like I
Yeah.
said,
Let me
not for everybody.
Unfortunately, I got a hard end here in about 3
No
minutes. Let
worries.
me ask you, so I think a fear I'd have if I was coaching and diving into this, you said a little bit is, yeah, you can't get ticked to make 'em run one day. You gotta be pretty consistent. What's a way a coach can dip their toe in the water on this and
You can't.
test it out?
You can't.
Can't.
You can't because it's not believable.
Mhm.
Today he feels like this. We're doing this today. And yeah, that's kind of a reward, but I don't know if it's still a reward. It's always been a punishment up to this time. You've got to really understand it. You've got to really believe in it. You've got to really prepare yourself to focus everything around that whole thing. Here's another thing that helps. When the players buy in, which doesn't take long, especially if you do some work with your influencers beforehand and get
Mhm.
them to understand the bigger picture, once they buy in, give them ownership. Look who you guys have become, a team that really cares about each other, a team that has a strong desire to be great, a team that's going to push each other, support each other, and going to work harder than anything they've ever done before. It just it that whole premise. I mean, it went back to what was I trying to do? I was trying to create a great team culture. I was trying to create the right kind of pride, and I was trying to be in better condition than anybody we were going to play.
Yeah. So, explain it in the logical way. Prep prep your
I'm sorry.
No worries.
Okay.
Explain it in a logical way. Prep your senior leaders, and then don't be a chicken and do it. It's basically
Well,
it.
you're gonna really understand it, and you know what?
Yeah.
I always tell people that buy that booklet,
Mhm.
after you've read it, and if you have any questions, call me because I can walk you through every scenario that you can ever imagine.
Mhm.
Every I mean, the worst thing I could do to my team is stop practice and not let them condition at all. They felt like there's like beating dogs walking off the field. They just like were just horrible. Uh, I had a team one time that was a football team that wasn't going to lose. They were just we were just better than everybody.
Yeah.
We could have never practiced and still gone undefeated. But one of the things we believed is you coach against a vision, how good you think that team could be, not your opponent. So we're coaching against. We think these guys can play here, and so we're gonna do everything we can to get them to reach that vision. And they were great kids. One day they just had a complete loss of focus in practice. It was after it was. There are some reasons for it, but it wasn't acceptable. I brought them together one time and said, "This is not us. This is not how we train. This is not how we focus. Da 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 da. Let's get it back together." Boom, happened again about 15 minutes later. I brought him in. I sent him in.
Yep.
And oh my gosh, you'd have think I'd have killed him. I'm in the office and I'm not very happy. Okay, because I'm actually taking the blame myself, thinking I haven't done a good enough job of practice planning to keep their focus. So I'm really thinking about myself and my coaching staff. We got to do a better job. That's as much on us as it is anybody. And all of a sudden, one of my coaches comes in from outside. He says, "Coach, you got to come see this." The kids had gone back outside, Rob, and they're running 3-person exchanges 50 yards.
I believe it.
And it was like, I just hugged them.
So cool. That's a good one to end on. That's an awesome story. Well, thank you. I'm gonna actually start testing this idea around here. I'll let you know how our coaches respond.
Yeah, well, have them give me a call.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk. Anybody who wants to try this, I'd love to talk to them about it.
Cool. Well, as always, hopefully not our last conversation. I appreciate you taking the time.
Appreciate you, Rob.
All right. Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Beyond Coaching. We hope today's discussion provided you with insights in understanding and leading. As always, thank you to the 3D Institute and Friends University for their support and passion for empowering leaders. If you have any questions for today's guest or for Rob Ramsire, all of our contact information is in the show notes. Thanks for tuning in.